It's the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast, a monthly podcast devoted to the groundwater industry produced by the National Groundwater Association. I'm your host, Mike Price, and today we're joined by Nick Sprowls of Beinhower Brothers Drilling Company in Johnstown, Ohio. Welcome to the first episode of the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast, a monthly podcast devoted to the groundwater industry. I'm Mike Price, Senior Editor of the National Groundwater Association's Waterwell Journal Monthly Trade Magazine. And today I'm with Nick Sprowls of Beinhower Brothers Drilling Company in Johnstown, Ohio. Thanks, Nick, for stopping in.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm excited.
Appreciate it. Yeah. Before we begin, Nick, can you introduce yourself to the viewers and provide your industry background for us?
Yeah, my industry background, I've been in the industry full time for I got to do some math here because I'm 45, 27 years. Done anything from drilling to pump work, excavating, left the industry a couple different times to try something else and always came back. I'm a third generation driller. My grandpa was in the industry. My dad is still currently working as a service manager with us at Beinhower. My son helped us out at the outdoor show. If anybody watched any of that footage, but hopefully get a fourth generation coming in here eventually. But yeah, a lot of days on a drill rig and just as many on a track hoe or pump hoist. So been all around it.
Awesome. Well, let's dive in to micromanaging the drilling rig.
Okay.
It's a term that you've brought up with me over the years.
Yeah.
And just want to learn more about it. What's that mean to you? Did you come up with that saying? And how long have you been micromanaging your company's rig?
Right. Well, I don't think I came up with it, but maybe I don't know. I'm a lot of ways I'm real OCD with how I do things. And like I was saying and thinking, my thoughts were that it's not necessarily that by choice. It's because I have to. I run three different facets of the company as far as an install crew, an excavation crew, the drilling. So as far as that goes, if I don't, things just get lost in the mix. So, and my theory behind it, honestly, was if I take care of the little things, the big things will follow. So micromanaging to me is taking care of all your little things, greasing the rig, changing the seals when they just first start leaking rather than saying it'll be all right. The water swivel seals is what I'm talking about. A lot of guys will know that. It's invest in a good rain jacket if you don't want to micromanage your seals. I've done that too. And quite honestly, the geothermal drilling I did in the day kind of allowed me, let's say, to push that rig further to where I know better today when to start micromanaging it. When to let that seal go one more time where I got 3 weeks or we got a bad weather day, I can change it. When can I change a bearing versus just greasing it a little more? When can I change my subsaver? Keep track of that footage so your subsaver is not past its spec. A lot of the rigging classes per se that I've done have told you that each time that thing tightens up is a little bit off its life. So if you can track that the best you can, you'll avoid the big things. It's kind of where it comes from, thinking that through. Right. And on geothermal, I ran so many different rigs that you had to learn each different micromanaging technique or trait of that rig. It's down to the subsaver. Some of them have floating heads, some of them are rigid, some of them are still older than I am out there drilling. So for me to run something older than me is I got to learn it. I don't know anything about that one. So
sure.
But in a nutshell, I think it take care of the little things, and the big things you'll avoid the big breakdowns best you can.
Mm-hmm. And each driller has their own way of tracking their maintenance and how they manage their rig. You have your own folder and how you track hours and on the equipment. So anything there that you've learned over the years that you
absolutely yeah so a lot of it is working with a lot of different guys. Some people don't have the luxury, and I call it a luxury because I've worked with several different drillers and companies that when you're kind of working for your dad your whole life, it's that way. You only do it that way. But working with different drillers, the one thing I picked up on was a manila folder and a pen and a paper, and just staple it to every time you did something, just write it down so you go back and see what hours you did, how long that piece lasts. The filters, they'll tell you, Jeffco did a nice job of giving us a printout of how long it should last. But if you're just changing filters, there's something else going on if you're not making their interval. So we also do oil sampling. Okay. So that has been with the Jeffco. That has saved us once for sure. And the rest of them have been good. So nothing to save there. But maintenance, I picked up footage. So I grease my rig by footage, not by hours. So if I do, let's say, and this is all estimates, say 500 feet, I'll grease the top head, the shivs, the pulleys and everything, and drive shafts on the drilling components. If I drive that rig, 10,000 miles, we'll grease the undercarriage. So it's kind of two different units that you associate when you should grease it. And at greasing, one quote, I don't know if anybody knew him or not, but he said it doesn't do you any good to leave the grease in the tube. So the greases are very inexpensive maintenance, preventative maintenance. And that's what in my micromanaging, I'm trying to prevent big breakdowns. So the way of doing that, like I say, you take care of 3 shots of grease in the shiv every day, and it may save you from losing the cable down the road or the pin breaking,
Yeah.
So very simple, and make sure the meters still work on everything, because the hours don't help if it's the same hours. And I joke because our air compressor meter broke for about 100 hours, and I kept writing down the same hours. And I looked in my book, and I'm like, no, I did not make 200. I made 0 hours. We had to have drilled. So, right. But yeah, keep track of the hours, and whatever works for you. Some guys like solely just changing everything at 500 hours, 250 hours, whatever it may be, so many miles. And then if you don't know your rig, so for example, the TH60 that I started on would run speedometer when you were in drill mode. So essentially when you're drilling, the speedometer is racking up 55 mile an hour the entire time. So you couldn't go on, a 5,000 mile interval on your engine oil. You would have to go on the hours that the machine ran. And then after so long, I knew that 10,000 miles equated to almost 250 to 300 hours. Okay. So at least my type of drilling. So if somebody else comes in and runs less of an RPM or more, their interval is going to be a little different.
Yeah. So you run a 2018 Jeffco
40K.
40K.
Yep.
Yeah. The oil sampling, real quick. Can you give a synopsis of how that works and how often you do it?
Yeah. So when we first got the rig, it was required for warranty, let's say. But now I try to do it once a year. Essentially, when we bought the rig, Jeffco supplied us with certain bottles and their testing facility. So I physically take the sample. What you do is what they instructed us to do was run the hydraulics, run the compressor, whatever the engine oil, run it for a certain amount of time. Definitely let it get warm. Don't just take a cold sample. Right. And then the best thing to do, which I haven't done because oils are expensive and I can't have the heart, you're supposed to waste 5 gallons and then take your sample. We've been pretty successful with, a quart or 2 once you see it kind of coming out like a good solid fluid. And when you send them away, the one that we send them to also sends a report to Jeffco. So if there is a problem, Jeffco's got firsthand knowledge of what is in it. It'll be a normal wear and tear. I don't know if I showed that to you, Mike, or not, but it'll tell you what's in the oil. Green, normal wear and tear. Compressor typically comes back with water in it just because nature of the beast. Compressor is, we drain it every day. I bring it in and drain the water off of it, but still always has a touch of water in it. Compressor oil itself, there's around 30 gallons of oil that's $40 a gallon, so to run 5 gallons off of that, if it comes back with bad, then Jeffco has the information to make a plan, so I'm not running another 10 wells before Jeffco knows what's going on to where they can recommend to me what to do. So like I said, it saved us one time. It caught some metal in the oil. The pilot charge filters, we have poppets on the side of it that when it gets plugged, it pops up. So it hadn't even popped yet. So I had like 3 wells, and the service manager had called and said, hey, your hydraulic oil came back with metal in it. And one of the hydraulic pumps prematurely failed, and it hadn't made it to the pilot charge filter yet. So some of it did, just not bad enough to plug it. So the pilot charge filter caught it, got everything, and that's been early on. So that's been 6 years ago. So that saved us from potentially destroying our entire hydraulic system. Yeah. So
Yeah.
about once a year,
Okay.
I still do it.
Yep. And it's pretty manageable, the cost of doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's, I would say it cost us under $500 to test. I test the transfer case, I test the compressor, and I test the hydraulics. The engine oil, I go on an hourly interval, and the pilot charge filters, they have, like I say, they have poppets on them. That's part of the hydraulic system. The top head gearbox, I change it just frequently because it's always full of dirt and mud. Like I don't know a rig out there that hasn't been confiscated that, or the dirt and oil always gets into the gearbox there. So, but yeah, I quit testing that because it was I want to say $50 to $100 per bottle by the time you ship it out.
Uh-huh.
They email you the results, right away. So it was about a week on turnaround.
Uh-huh.
I took the samples 2 weeks ago. They got shipped out last week. This week I had the results.
Okay. Good deal.
So yeah, super manageable and
Yeah.
very inexpensive compared to, just give you an idea, some of the components on that console are $700 to $1,000 a piece. There's 7 joysticks, and the guys that run Jeffco's are very familiar with a potentiometer and an electric joystick. The older valves, I think they held up a little better, the Braden valves on that Jeffco, but just moving on to the new age technology, there's a price with it.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's been fun. It's been fun running. It's been one of the most unique rigs I've ran. I've ran several of them over the years, so got to love and hate a lot of them.
Sure. Well, as we're recording this in February, what do your typical winter months look like for you right now?
So anymore, the winter months, it doesn't necessarily based on the month. It's more based on the weather. Ohio's crazy. Like we're sitting at 57 and sunny today, and I kick myself for not drilling. There's work, and I think people call when the sun comes out. They don't call when it's raining and nasty, but typically in February, if you take a winter cold month, if it stays below freezing, I'll try to avoid taking the rig out as much as I can. Now, obviously, the no waters take precedence. And to give you a range, we can take that rig out. And I know guys push this limit all the time because I did myself. Another thing I learned from geothermal, but anywhere from 0 degrees to let's say in the 90s, once we're not accustomed to heat. Everybody talks about the cold in February, but you get above the heat in the hundreds, you're generating more heat with the rig. Right. There's just as much of a risk as there is at 0. Now, if I had my perfect day, start out at 32 and end up at 42 and don't have to winterize anything. But, a typical February day, say I take the rig out, you winterize everything at the shop. It's already done from the job before. You take everything out, you get your mud drilling done. And if you are able to finish that day, everything gets blown out and then you winterize and shut down. That procedure in itself, probably adds half hour to 45 minutes. At least, depending on who your helper is these days, so could add another hour. Geothermal, that's where you really managed when you're going to be done because you knew you had to blow everything out. Because the coldest I worked in was minus 34. Ooh. And it was in Chicago on a geo job, and the rig actually started, which I was shocked in that in itself. But the only time I've seen running water freeze. Coming out of a poly tank. Right? Yeah. Yep. Wow. Yep. Wow. So it's like, we're shutting this off.
Good.
Yeah. But typically over the winter in February months, we're trying to catch up on that micromanaging, fixing little things, changing my seals, greasing the rig good, cleaning up, finding pins that are loose or ties, zip ties on the hoses or whatever, that wiring that's kind of got janky over the year for a technical term for you. But drill rig manufacturers seem to love zip ties. So build up your stabilizer. That's a kind of a forgotten task of a driller. We do some hard facing welding and for the abrasion of the stabilizer. So you try to do that on your off season. But at the same time, just be ready to go in case you get a week like we had this week. And because people, they don't stop coming in, they don't walk away yet. So
I know. So you're itching to get back to drilling, obviously. So over the years, what's been the traditional month you're out there full time? What's the winter fall? Is it?
I would say, on average, that the end of February, early March, you're really going at it 100%. Whereas you're not taking that service call or something else or other. And at the same time, with us being, we have 4 or 5 guys, so it's not like we have a dedicated install crews. That's what I'm doing now with the drilling, and then some commercial stuff. It depends on where you're going, but in the better months, temperature wise and weather wise, the service guys can get more done as well. So they don't necessarily need as much help. So you pick a nice day at the end of February, early March. I've been out about every one of them, full time for sure. A lot of guys don't have the luxury of stopping. They just got to go. And I've been there. And so to tell you a month that January 1, most drillers are going full time in their head anyway, but then they'll look outside and the weather plays a big role on it. No, we're not doing it today. Right. We'll wait till tomorrow. We'll do Saturday. We'll do Sunday. We'll wait till, a week of 50s.
Yeah. Okay. Well, while you're itching to get back out there, looking back in 2023, which was your favorite drilling job, if you could recall?
Well, I think that there were several of them, and when I say that, I truly enjoy drilling. I like running equipment, and I feel like the rig is the biggest piece of equipment that you can, there's so many people that know nothing about it. So when they look at it, they're just in awe. But there was a run of 12 wells in a row that I was in deep well country in Licking County over there. None of them were shallower than 260. So I just was talking to Ryan, my buddy, and I said, how would you like to have all 80 footers? He said he would love it. And I was like, well, no, the run of 12 wells I did, and all deep gravel wells over in, people know where I'm talking about, that Licking Valley or Licking County area.
Yeah.
It just happened to be, they all fell in place that I was, kind of in the same area, and anywhere from 260 to 355 was a run of 12 of them. And when I was in it doing it, I hated it. But looking back on it, I was like, that was pretty cool, like running through. When you see casing sitting around, you get itchy. When you see the rig sitting around, that's your money maker. So it's stuff sitting there. You want to put it in the ground. You want to get out there and get going. So, right. But I think looking back on 23, that was it. That was it. A long run of. So it wasn't any particular one.
Which part of the year was that? Summer? Or?
Summer. Yeah. So we had decided early in the year, we're you get into this workforce where we had a guy leave, and we bought a mud manager. So I did a lot of the drilling with at least very minimum an inexperienced guy. So that left a lot to do for me. But just like bringing in the mud slayer took a lot of heat off of me, and I was able to do a lot of the drilling basically on my own. Right. For the most part, I didn't have anybody experienced there. The boss could go out and take care of other fires he had going on over there, and I could just, that was kind of, it worked in good timing, because at the time we just didn't have a whole lot of hands to keep running full go. So with the mud slayer, that helped us out with the shoveling, and then with the ability to do, an 80 footer is actually harder logistically to handle than a 300 footer, because typically 2-3 days, for us, get out there and get set up. And I've done one 300 footer in a day back in the day, but just don't run that hard anymore.
Yeah. Well, speaking of running hard from a health and safety standpoint, as you're looking to get back to drilling full time, from your PPE to hydration to sleep to anything else in between, what do you do to prepare for returning to drilling full time as the season begins?
I'd be lying to you if I told you I prepared anything. I'm more reactive when it comes to that. I do say that the hydration part of it has played a big role. I've actually started carrying a gallon jug, which I never did in the past. Years ago, when I was young, I'd carry 6 pops in the cooler, and I was probably all dehydrated to anything. But my worst days are when I get dehydrated. So I try not to let that happen. And usually everything else falls into place. The older I get, I'm sure I'm gonna have to do some stretching and this, but we haven't done that yet. PPE for sure. Just a couple weeks ago, we had a company meeting, and any hoist that goes up, it's a company policy now. Like before, it was just understood, like, hey, there's overhead hazards, you need your hard hat. Now it actually made it clear, like if you're on a hoist, anything overhead falling, you got the PPE that we supply, the hard hats, the ear protection. Right. If you need earplugs, we get those. We've been trying to keep a good stock of gloves, even though once you get into the warm months, you want to do away with the gloves. We try to keep, obviously we're long sleeves year round, because I don't do well with sunburn. But the hydration is where it starts. In my head is I have my worst days when I'm dehydrated.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and the sleep is a huge part that like gets overlooked too.
Oh
And
man.
that's good. That gets hard during the summer months when you're out,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not so much hard in the summer. It's coming out of winter because we're like bears and hibernating, right? So we're not doing
Right.
as much.
Right.
And then all of a sudden you get out and you're like, I got 2 weeks worth of 14-hour sunny days. We go like mad, and I know that's across the state as guys just go take advantage of the sunny days the best they can. So you always have that first, I don't know, used to be a week
Yeah.
of misery. Now for me, getting older, it's about 3 to 4 weeks of, depending on how hard we go, this is getting harder and harder. I might have to find a driller, So, but to prepare, the hydration is the one I'm probably best and worst at, let's say.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. All right. How about well development? What do you have to say about well development protocol for you? And has it changed over the years?
well, for me if I could answer that honestly, that it has changed for me drastically because I've worked for several different companies. One of them was strictly a cleaning company out of Groveport, and that was the first time I was introduced to a surge block and an airlift and brushing with a cable tool rig, and I did some CO2 cleaning there. So the development to me really took light then. Typically on a water well anymore, our rig's got 1,000 CFM. I carry a jetting tool on there if it stays a little dirty. But I don't. Back to micromanaging. If I managed my mud properly, my overburden mud rotary drilling, and have most of the solids out of it, the development kind of falls into place. Not necessarily every time, but if I get real, and I don't weigh my mud, but if I get to the point where it's getting, I can get one more and get one more. A lot of times all them solids get packed in there, and you really have to work to get them out. Developmental wise for us, I haven't seen a lot of change.
Okay.
But when I say that, it's there's a lot of different methods available to us that we have tried in different wells. Say we get in a bad area where it's only making a half a gallon a minute, and we can develop it up to 3. I've seen a rise of a lot of well cleanings lately that with the rig, with a little mini compressor and a hoist. Just did one last Friday. Fished out I should have brought it to you. It was a motor that had been stuck in a well, and we fished it out with an overshot, and it had deteriorated the casing of the motor. I'll take a picture of it and send it to you. But side note, sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, but yeah. So that was with an airlift and just a brush and some galvanized piping. Limestone hole, been drilled. I was drilled in 92. And when that motor fell in there, the casing scale over the years just kind of added up on top of it. And when we put the new pump in, it pulled the casing scale into the intake. And when the intake plugs up, it starves the pump. And so we end up suggesting cleaning the well. And that's what I did last week. So to say the development has changed, yeah, it has, just because I've done different techniques over the years. And like say, if I get drilling a brand new well, if I can manage my mud just right and everything goes perfect, which some days it actually does, it actually develops out pretty nice.
How long would you say if it goes all according to plan? What would be the development time you'd say?
I would say most of the time it's around that hour mark. Because when I say that, it takes you about an hour to tear down. So every time you pack the mud tub up, you get all your hoses put away and cleaned up and ready for the rig to trip out. It's typically about an hour. Could be upwards of 2 to 3. Depending on how much. A couple of them that'll spit sand. You'll get little fine sand layers into the coarse sand. And for the most part, if you get a thick enough layer, you try to capture all of it. And then with the rotary with an oversized hole, the gravel pack will take care of some of it too. So we run, I call it a fairly safe size for the county. We'll run a stainless screen with a silica gravel pack that is designed to, you're not going to get the maximum amount of yield out of the well, but as far as getting enough solids out of the formation from your mud, it's a pretty safe fail safe. Now, most of the time you're not going to set a super fine screen because you think it's sandy. You're going to try the coarse screen, and then if you spit sand, the next one you're going to is going to be a little finer.
Yeah.
But there's guys. I know there's a lot of guys around the state that run finer screens, but we haven't had to explore that so much.
Okay. And you're not just a driller. You
Yeah.
install pump systems.
Yeah.
So tell us how long you've been doing that, and what have you learned over the years that could be helpful for viewers?
Yeah. What I learned when I first started, I was terrible at all of it. So the first pump system I did, I was 16 or 17, and it was actually December 23rd. I remember that just because it was around Christmas, and I was so jacked to go do a pump system. Like Dad was going to. I know I was at least 16 because I had my license,
Yeah.
and he was going to let me do this one system over winter break, and I was so pumped to go do it. I just wanted to go. Well, it took me. It was a solid day and a half, because the first time I run the trencher, I was white knuckled, like first time I drove the car, didn't want to hit the house. It was cold, it was frozen, it was muddy. There was about 100 feet of overhead he didn't tell me about, So I've been actually doing pumps and systems and service calls since I had my license. So when I first started with my dad, it was 95, I believe. I believe I got my license in 95,
Yeah.
but that's when I started on the service.
Mhm.
And it was a lot of phone calls. It was kind of, I know I touched on the interview a little bit, and it isn't so much like everything right there, but you got to know who to call. Well, that would go to was my dad on that, and maybe the service guy or something or other. And as simple as a pressure switch that wasn't working was like Greek to me.
Yeah.
So and moving forward, the once I got on the drill rig and I understood the entire system was really when I started figuring out pumps. Back before drilling, it was more just, hey, go put the half 10 in, go put we used well mate, so a WM14, 30-foot a ditch, 1-inch water line. I could understand all that, and I could make go from point A to point B pretty easy.
Mhm.
But once you get to drilling, you're like, man, that's a lot that goes into that. No wonder we did a half 10. And so over the years, just been on service crews here and there.
Yeah.
Mainly drilling, but a lot of service, a lot of commercial. Love diving into the VFDs and constant pressures anymore. I would say that's a big portion of what we do, new systems wise, and I like the new technology. So it works my brain a little bit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's been at least if not longer than my 27 years in the full time. That's why I clarify it as full time industry. So
Gotcha.
I actually started at 13 shoveling the mud tub.
Sure.
Yeah, as free labor. So
The size of the pump system.
Yep.
That's something that that's the cardinal rule.
Yep.
So
Yeah.
that's
pretty much the key to the longevity of the pump system, and bringing that to light of the drilling. Back before I really understood drilling like I do, why would we put in a 5 gallon a minute pump? They need 10. The well doesn't make 10. So you put a 10 and a 5, it's going to wear out the pump faster, and it's going to wear out the well faster. Because you're stressing that well each time that pump turns on. And if you don't have it sized properly with the tank, there's manufacturer specs of runtime and how many kilowatt hours it takes, or wattage it takes for the day for that pump to run. So if your tank is undersized, I don't think oversized is as much of a problem, but that's just because I've seen my mom's house have same tank for the last 40 years, and it's a huge, ginormous tank. But a 351, I think. I get my numbers mixed up anymore, but if you make them too small, then it's the cycle time's just not there. And does it work? Well, absolutely. It will work. Is it the best thing to go in? You have to decide that on your own. I don't personally think so, but I like to properly size something to where they get the maximum life out of it.
Yep.
So
yeah. Okay. Well, as everyone knows, the groundwater industry's top concern is workforce development.
Oh yeah.
The future of the industry.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on how to engage the younger generation in getting them interested in the industry at this time?
Well, I'm glad you asked that, because we reached out to the Delaware Area Career Center, and me and Eric Moody of Moody's of Dayton met up with them.
Okay.
It was an amazing visit. I felt like they were more excited for us to be there than we were excited for them to be there. So my thoughts are, we got to target that me. Out of high school, I went to college, but it wasn't really what I was shooting for. And we're hoping that we can work with career centers, that type of venue, to maybe put on a demo. I know I talked to you about possibly doing a demo, and things get busy and just hadn't happened yet. But they were extremely excited. We met with 4 instructors and an assistant principal: the welding, the small engine, landscape, and construction. And ironically, none of them talked about wells. And the question I asked them was, how many of your students are on wells? Like, where does your service area reach?
Yeah.
And they said, and this is their guess, about 60% of their students were on a well. And I said, you're not touching a well at all. They've reached the city water coming in. But so I think in developing more workforce in the future, we got to get our industry, our professionalism out there, where be it a touch a truck, a home and garden show. I saw a company out of Indiana had a booth at their home and garden show. Not too long. It was I think C&J, welcome name.
Okay.
But I thought Dan Smith has brought that up several times. We got to get to a home and garden show. Franz Drilling used to participate in the county fair up there, take their rig up there just to, get your eyes. I feel like we've kind of, as the industry starts, I wouldn't say slowing down, but the numbers start coming down, that the opportunity to get out there becomes less and less, because, if I'm doing 3 different crews that used to be back in the day, I don't really have time to take the rig, clean it up, go to the home and garden show. But I do think that getting the name out there and getting the appeal out to the younger generation. Interesting fact: we had Buddy Sebastian at our convention 2 years ago. Also last year, but 2 years ago I sat in on it, and there was 100 people in that room. And he said, "How many of you are over 55?" And my guesstimation was there was 80. And he said, "How many of you are under 30?" And there were 6. I could count those. So what's that leave for the 100? There was 14 of my age from 55 to 30. So out of that 80, that's basically driving our industry right now, there's 14 of us to take over the next step. And there's only 6 of them that's going to help us.
Right.
So out of an average of 100. So like I say, I think hitting that younger target audience is going to be a must moving forward. We're working with guys that just like to help people. We're a public servant. We provide water. It's essential for life. It's that kind of attitude, I think, is what we need to find. And the rest of it's mechanical. You can give them a set of meters and everything else, and then they can typically figure it out. It's that drive that's hard to get people to show up. But career centers, all that stuff, the job fairs and this, that, and the other, I'd love to be able to say that we could set up a booth and just try to target that younger audience. So
okay. And your dad, who's used to be a master groundwater contractor in his day, Gary.
Losing his mind letting that go, wasn't he?
But still at it, working for the company. What his thoughts are on the industry, being in it for so long, and what his hopes are for the next generation?
I want to say that his hopes and thoughts are similar to mine. Whereas more along the lines of when he retires versus maybe he's going to be around when I retire. I don't know. I may retire next week. It's hard telling, but I know he truly enjoys the industry and what he does, and he's good at it. He's got a lot of knowledge into it. So I don't want to speak for him, but what I hope is that he takes some of that knowledge and passes it on to not me. I've already been a sponge for 20 years. There's always stuff I can learn. So that doesn't have to be my dad, but my hope is that he passes it on to the guy he works with now. That pass that knowledge on to that guy, because he's going to need that more than I will moving forward. So I don't know when he was going to retire last year, and then this year, and then he threw out a number of 5 more years. And I said, wait, why not? If you can still do it. And he's still out. He's our service manager. So doesn't come on the rig very often, up to a couple years ago. Still holds a CDL. So still threatens to go out and run.
That transfer of knowledge is so key. And it's just, there's different ways of doing it. Do you see or have an idea of what works maybe better than other methods, or
no,
when it comes to that?
No, it like I say, I think it has to be in the individual with the want. I've tried 3 different techniques last year, because like I was telling you, we had and it might not have been 3, it might have been 2, but we've had trouble getting a guy to stick around on the rig. The drilling is to be a helper. it's not hard per se, but it's not really regular, so it's not like I can go out and say, I'll be back at 4:30. There, something may happen. I got to be there till midnight. So what I tried was TMI, too much information. Just hopefully they grab onto wee bits of it.
Yeah.
That did not work.
No.
That was information overload.
Okay.
And as you can tell, I can talk for days. So the next step was just to tell them what they needed to know. Well, what that did, so there was 3. I'm good. Okay, I'm not losing my mind, but tell them what they need to know. Hey, take this tank, go put it in the basement. And they come back up. What do I do now? Well, you put the tank T together and then go put it on the tank. Well, I felt like they got half upset with me by thinking I was just sending them on a wild goose chase. So step 3 was, what we're doing. We did this last week. Take a minute to think about it and then go do it. Well, you're going to tell me it's wrong, probably. But if you take accountability, so I was trying to force accountability on them. Yeah. What I'm finding is that some guys don't want the accountability; they want to be told. So it's kind of like bouncing and reading your helper, your employee, your boss. Even going upscale, I don't have to go downscale. So there's sometimes that my brain thinks differently than my dad or Brad's brain, and perceiving that information in a way that they accept that communication has been tough for me, because in my head it makes sense.
Sure.
So, but yeah, those 3, welcome to try any one of the methods, but they were hit and miss. I had some good success with just force feeding, and if you ever talk to Ryan, you can ask him. Back in the day, there was one option and one option only. It was either do it or don't.
Right.
I guess you had 2. Sorry, you either did it or you didn't. Yeah. So
you got good help for the upcoming season.
Yeah. So the Dad's still around, so the knowledge is still there. Brad's still plugging away and really getting after it. Like making sure we got stuff to do. Yeah. And there's the guy that works with Dad. He's been with us 7+ years, real well versed in the service and softener side of it, and he can pick up where Dad takes off. Like I say, just hope he absorbs all that information. And then we've got a couple of temporary guys, part-times, that one works with me Monday, Tuesday, the other one Wednesday through Friday. And that's a whole nother logistic scheduling nightmare in itself. But they're the ones I've been experimenting with. Here, try this. Yeah. And it's been a good learning experience for me as far as managing people and not getting super frustrated straight away. But it's allowed me to sit back and just say, hey, it's okay. If you break something, it's okay. If something takes forever, it's okay. But if you want me to show you how to do it, don't get mad when I'm faster. Just don't get upset, because that when I jump in there, they think I'm trying to push them aside, and not everything I do faster than, especially younger guys. But as far as putting in a tank or a pump, or I just you got to have this kind of mindset. But it's been good. Yeah, I'm looking forward to 24. There's always more work coming in. Yeah. So keep knock on wood. I shouldn't have said that, but
yeah. All right, cool. And just lastly, as there's always something new to learn in this industry, are you eyeing anything you want to learn more about in 24?
So I would love, and maybe not in 24, but I would love to explore the dual rotary side of drilling. I've always thought that I would like to cable tool, but I don't think that's going to happen. So the DR and the sonic drilling has been a peak in just learning more about it. Like I don't want to dive into having one of them, but it's kind of like the mud rotary back in the day. It's like this is the next coolest thing. But and a side note, that equipment wise, I would love to learn more about owning a company, becoming more of ownership versus just the everyday managing type things. So I do always like to learn more about that, just because that's my skill set's not there. I've had 27 years in the field. Yeah. So I need to work on the clerical office administration, telephones, bidding jobs. And I always love to expand on that, new and improved projects, or neat projects, we'll say.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
cool. Well, hey, man, thanks for all your time and knowledge you shared today.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to the WWJ Industry Connected Podcast. We'll be back next month with a brand new episode, so be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on your favorite podcast platform. We're on all the major platforms, so it'll be easy to find us. And visit waterwelljournal.com for the latest expert columns, feature articles, videos, and news covering the groundwater industry. So one more time for Nick and I, thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.